Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MMA Island podcast. I am Jack Kennedy alongside Mace Martinez and Keelan McNamara, and this is your podcast for the latest in MMA.
I'm Jack Kennedy, and they hit a lot harder, in my opinion, too.
Mace Martinez. I don't think that's going to happen because those are two of the hottest divisions in the UFC right now.
I'm Keelan McNamara. He is here to stay, and I see him being a huge problem.
And this is the MMA Island podcast.
Well, we have a stacked podcast for you today. I'm so excited. There's UFC 259 is right around the corner. We will be predicting all of the title fights on that card for you coming up in just a bit. But first, we will be giving you some of the latest breaking news fights. And we're going to go ahead and start off with the sad and bad news, get that out of the way before we can go into the more exciting stuff. The UFC has unfortunately cut Alistair Overeem and Junior Dos Santos, two legendary fighters. What do we think about this one, guys?
Yeah, it's the end of an era for sure. There's no other way to put it. Both Overeem and Dos Santos have had tremendous careers in the UFC and even in prior promotions. Dos Santos was able to win the heavyweight title against Kane back in 2011. He's had some massive wins over some big time heavyweights. Shane Carwin, Frank Mir, Alistair Overeem. Now that we mentioned him, he knocked him out. Derek Lewis. So he was great while he was with the UFC. He also beat Stipe.
Yeah.
Obviously Stipe avenged that loss, but that's a big win for Dos Santos nonetheless to have under his belt. As far as him being cut by the promotion, I think it's warranted. He's lost his last 4 fights. The losses that he's had, a lot of these guys are in the top 6 of the division. So if Dos Santos was planning to stay relevant and continue trying to fight for a belt, it was going to be a hard thing to do for him. So, honestly, I think they did him a favor in cutting him. I think that they had, the thought process of not wanting him to stick around and be getting beat up by these younger guys. And, they do some of these legends like that, man, where they leave them in there for people to make their names off of them. And it might fly a little bit more in the smaller divisions, but in heavyweight, everybody's there with cruel intentions to knock people out and put them to sleep and hurt them. So, I kind of commend the UFC for not just making him a gatekeeper and letting these young guys make a name off of him. I'm glad they didn't want that for Dos Santos. As far as Overeem goes, another legend, like I said, a great career, always a title challenger, but never a champion. Just like, always a bridesmaid, never a bride. That was Alistair Overeem for the UFC. Obviously, he's had a success with Strikeforce and Dream and K1. That can't be ignored whatsoever. He's a brilliant mixed martial artist. As far as the cut goes for him, kind of in the same boat as Dos Santos, Overeem, he dropped his last one to Volkov, I think.
Yeah.
So the losing streak for Overeem wasn't that bad. It wasn't as bad as what Dos Santos is having. But at the same time, the people that he has lost to recently are those same top tier guys that Dos Santos has dropped fights to. So the same thing goes for him. If we want Overeem in the heavyweight picture, then we want him competing for titles. And for him to do that now with the current roster just is evolving constantly at heavyweight. I just think it's almost a favor for him as well. So it would have been an uphill battle for him as well to try to stay relevant in that title picture. So, and then you also have to wonder, because these guys are such huge names and because they've accomplished so much and they're such legends, what the money situation was like. Was it a money thing? Did they want too much money? And maybe the UFC didn't think that was okay, but all in all, I think that the UFC did right by cutting both of them. But end of an era for sure. Sad to see him go.
Yeah, it's a really, really sad day, to be honest with you, for the heavyweight division. Junior Dos Santos and Alistair Overeem are two of the greatest heavyweights that we've ever seen, not just in the UFC, but in the mixed martial arts world as an entity as a whole. not only two of my most favorite, but two of my earliest heavyweight fight memories growing up as a fan are Junior Dos Santos beating arguably the greatest heavyweight in history, Cain Velasquez, for the title, and the other is Alistair Overeem going in and beating Brock Lesnar. Going in, being the demolition man and demolishing a beast like Lesnar. It was always, we knew this day was going to come at some point, but it doesn't really take away from the sadness that you naturally feel when it does come around anyway. Like Mace said, Dos Santos, I don't think his fighting skid was that bad. I think it's more the fact that heavyweight's gone such a rapid evolution over the last couple of years that it's accelerated the departure of some guys who might have just been hanging on anyway. And, we don't want to see Junior Dos Santos and Alistair Overeem relegated to that. They're too good and too deserving to be clingers on and to be guys that fighters make the name off of. I wholeheartedly agree with that. And in many ways, I'm glad they're saved from the pain of that, most definitely. Overeem's departure, there's no shame in it whatsoever. He went up against a massively improved Alexander Volkov, gave it his best, and went out on his shield like the warrior he is and the warrior he always has been. Same for Junior Dos Santos. Just, some younger fighters got the best of him. He's heading down past his prime anyway, and I think it's a very dignified exit at this point for both gentlemen. Their legacies are still fully intact, and they will forever be remembered for the contributions they've made to our beautiful sport. I think an interesting question Mace definitely raises is, was it potentially something in the background? Was it money? Was it something along those lines? Personally, I think it was more the former idea, almost like along a Chuck Liddell kind of line, and stopping these guys from hurting themselves and their own legacies. At least that's what the fan in me desperately wants it to be. And the fan in me is definitely happy that that is the case, because I don't want to see guys who are as good as Dos Santos and Overeem become washed up fighters on a prelim or an undercard for younger fighters to just beat up on. They're too pristine for that. So I'm glad that they're out of the way almost, and that the younger guys are getting the chance to make their names off of each other rather than legends who are too worthy of being relegated to that status. So it's a really, really sad day, no doubt at all. And it does hurt a lot as a fan, especially growing up with guys like Dos Santos and Overeem. But I agree with Mace, it's overall the right decision, I think.
Yeah, it's tough, and everything what you guys just said was perfect, spot on. I love Junior Dos Santos. I mean, just the legendary fights he had, that Mark Hunt interim heavyweight title fight was insane. That the spinning kick he landed, and there's really nothing you can say about these guys that hasn't already been said. They're absolute legends of the sport, Hall of Famers, no doubt. You can't write the story of the UFC without them, especially the heavyweight division. And it's tough. You love seeing their fights. The only thing for me, the only thing that doesn't it sits a little bit uneasy, and I could be totally wrong about this one. It's just the way that they were just kind of cut. I almost wish that the UFC would have given them maybe like one more fight each or whatever. Especially Alistair Overeem, who he lost his last fight and pretty bad, but that was to Alexander Volkov, and how good has he looked in his new state. So I maybe give him one more fight. And Junior Dos Santos just lost to Cyril Gane, and we're seeing how good he is too. So those are two really up and coming guys they're losing to. But they are the age, they're definitely out the door, which is I do understand the UFC's decision to cut them. And with the heavyweight division is so stacked right now, you can't really have too many guys that are just hanging on, because they will get hurt in that division. I mean, just look at Tom Aspinall we're seeing come up. There's just too many names in that division right now that are just climbing the ranks and everything. So it's tough. It's tough for sure. I wish the UFC maybe would have said, okay, this is the last fight, so that maybe you get one more dignified shot at the last fight in the UFC. But I'm okay with it. I know Alistair Overeem just signed with I don't remember the name exactly. He signed with someone. I don't know about Junior Dos Santos, but whenever you're fighting at the highest level in the UFC, it's honestly more than anything, it's for their safety at this point as well, because you can see the power and the speed that those guys have. I almost wish they would do the same for Andrei Arlovski at this point too. He's been fighting for a long time and he's just hanging on. He's really just been a gatekeeper at this point. And these guys, they just can't take these shots. Heavyweight is the hardest division to stay healthy in, just because of the extreme power you're taking from even a jab, from even not even the half hardest hitting heavyweight. You'll get hurt. So I understand the division. I wish the best for Junior Dos Santos and Alistair Overeem. And overall, just thank you guys for what you did for the UFC and for me and for all of us watching you throughout your career.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I echo your sentiments fully, Jack. I think it's a perfect fitting tribute to both guys. You know, I'm sure all of us just thank them deeply and very deeply for what they've given us over the years. They've given us their health, the best years of their life. They've given their blood, their sweat, their tears all over the years. And they're just such shining stars and legends of our sport. My only wish is that they'd be given a bit more of a glorious announcement. It felt like it was very
Yeah.
brutal and cutting, because whenever I was reading it last night here, I found out from the likes of MMA fighting, Dos Santos and Overeem are released. And for someone who's given so much to the sport, I want even a nice video or something, to properly recognize them for what they've given us for so long. But yeah, what people forget very often and very easily is that heavyweight is the hardest division to stay in. It's very easy to critique heavyweights because the average fan who watches and who sees perhaps one leg kick or one jab and wonders why that hurts, that's the equivalent of getting 2 or 3 jabs or 2 or 3 leg kicks in a lower division. You can't quantify the power that heavyweights carry. And when you get knocked out, you get knocked out. And I'm glad you actually mentioned Andrei Arlovski, because he's another guy I'd like to see go at some point. Not that I want him to go, but I want the legacy of Andrei Arlovski to be maintained in the appropriate way. Nothing against Tom Aspinall. He's one of the great up-and-coming heavyweights, but I don't want Arlovski reduced to being rubble that people just make the names off of. So yeah, thank you very much, Junior Dos Santos and Alistair Overeem. We appreciate everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and move along from that topic onto the exciting stuff now. And we got a banger of a fight coming up. Edson Barboza versus Shane Burgos just got booked for UFC 262, which is crazy. They're already booking fights for that. But what a fight. What do we think about this one, guys?
I like this matchup. I think it's a big opportunity for Burgos. I think he's ranked ahead of Barboza, if I'm not mistaken, at 145. But a win for him over Barboza is going to do wonders, regardless of where they're ranked at. I think both of these guys' last wins were against Amir Khani or something like that. So, man, it's really simple. And in my opinion, if Burgos wants bigger fights, these are the types of fights he needs to win. And if Edson Barboza is hoping to stay where he can crack that top 10 again eventually, then he needs to win these fights. But this is definitely a huge opportunity for Shane Burgos. I think it's going to be a great fight. Man, if I had to pick right now, I think I just have to go with Barboza. But the opportunity for that Burgos has is huge as he continues to make that climb. And Barboza, yeah, he's got to win to stay in the rankings. I think he's like 13th or 14th. So, I mean, he drops a fight here and he could definitely fall out of the top 15. And then you're having these talks about him, But, I mean, with Edson being such a prolific striker, Burgos going to have his work cut out for him, but it should be a good one.
Yeah, like Mace, I love this matchup. I think it's an amazing stylistic creation between Hurricane Shane Burgos and Edson Barboza. I'm just looking now. Shane Burgos is number 12 and Barboza is 14. So 14. This is big implications for top 10 of featherweight. It's going to be a really, really good fight. Shane Burgos is absolutely incredible in there. I think he's 13-2 so far in his career. So that tells you how good Shane Burgos is. And I love Edson Barboza. I think he's one of the greatest kickers we've ever seen in the UFC. Every time I think of Edson Barbosa, I think back to that Dan Hooker fight and just the levels of unholy damage that were done to Dan Hooker, and how he's still alive is beyond my medical comprehension, I'll be honest. I think this is going to be an amazing fight. Both guys are going to meet in the middle of the octagon and just let things go. And I think that's going to make for a hell of a fight, whether it's 3 rounds or 5. I don't think we know which one it is yet. That's going to be a fantastic fight. I'm leaning at this preliminary moment. I'm leaning towards Barbosa just because of the kicks. Barbosa can land a really good kick with actually very minimal distance required. He's not like your traditional kick heavy fighter who requires a lot of circular space in order to throw a kick. He can actually throw it whilst being quite claustrophobed. He can throw it with very minimal amounts of space and still knock you out. So at the moment, I'm leaning towards Barbosa. And regardless of who wins this, they will definitely be looking at someone like Dan Ige in the top 10. So this is going to be big for both guys. Like Mace said, from Burgos's perspective, Barbosa's a really good scalp to eye up because he's a really well-known name. He's been big at 155. He's fought Khabib. So his name carries big resonance within 145 and 55. And if Burgos can get a win over someone like Edson Barbosa, it will propel him very much into the top 10 of featherweight, which is, of course, where he wants to be. So this is a great fight. I'm really, really looking forward to it.
Oh man, I'm telling you what, I think this could be fight of the year contender right here. I have a really good feeling about this one. I had a really good feeling about anytime Edson Barbosa fights, it's going to be a good fight. But Shane Burgos is like, I think, a good comparison. Not exactly because there's no one like him, but Justin Gaethje to Shane Burgos is not an unrealistic comparison. They both walk forward with the same looking thing. They do throw leg kicks a lot. Now, no one's going to throw a better leg kick than Edson Barbosa, but that being said, the pressure is interesting and causes danger for Edson Barbosa, which is why at the moment it could flip. Who knows? I'm leaning towards Shane Burgos in this fight. He's also looked very good recently. He's got some real power. But that being said, I love Edson Barbosa so much. He's one of the most exciting, flashy guys you watch because, in an instant, you look away, you blink, the other guy could be knocked out from a head kick. You don't know. He also has some power in his hands too, which is very exciting. I don't know. The one thing I will say, which in favor of Edson Barbosa, is he is 1-1 in featherweight, which I believe, but one of those losses was a terrible decision that went against him. In fact, he dropped when his last fight, 155, which is against Paul Felder. That was, I think, I disagree with that decision as well.
That's I guess.
Then he went down to featherweight in his first fight. I think he fought Dan Ige. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong. I don't exactly remember who he fought, but he dropped a decision there as well. So he's on the wrong side of decisions. But then his last fight, he won. I think that was Americani. And then now he's fighting Shane Burgos, which if that fight goes to a decision, I don't even know what to think about the UFC anymore because those guys are going to be throwing heat and kicks and everything. Really, it's whoever gets caught clean first for me. But I just think Shane Burgos has such a relentless style and moves forward that Edson Barbosa will be a bit puzzled by it because whenever Edson Barbosa, the only time people are actually able to beat him, and I love Edson Barbosa is one of my favorite fighters to watch, so I watch a lot of his fights. When he struggles is when he backs up. Going forward, he's unstoppable. No one beats him going forward. In fact, like literally no one has beat him whenever he's going forward. But when you're able to throw a strong punch and get him stopping, and then if you're able to back him up, he's not very good backing up. That's how Justin Gaethje finished him against the cage. He was backing up, big right hook. Obviously, a lot of fight. Cowboy way back in the day got him doing that as well. Striking, you don't want to strike him, but Shane Burgos' style, I think he might back him up a little bit and take the win. But that being said, who knows with this fight? Just to keep your eye on, this is my potential fight of the year right here. At least I think it'll be fight of the night for UFC 262. Definitely too early to say that, but that just shows how excited I am for this fight. It's going to be awesome. Definitely watch it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just such an interesting fight, Edson Barbosa could go and knock him out with the first kick he throws. It could somehow make it to a decision. We just don't know.
Yeah.
And breaking down Barbosa's potential weaknesses, because as much as we all love Barbosa, he does have some weaknesses in his game that we don't know if he's fixed yet or not. Jack's just excellently covered the backing up game. That's been glaring for his last few fights. Whenever guys have pressurized him, it takes him a long time to reset and get back to pressing forward. We've seen occasions where it's taken a whole round for him to do that. And against Shane Burgos, you cannot afford to do that, because Burgos will keep pressing and pressing until he breaks you. My other issue with Barbosa that he's shown a 55 and sometimes a 45 is his gas tank. In the Dan Hooker fight especially, Barbosa was pacing him up, absolutely no question. But especially around the second round, he seemed to completely run out of gas. And he was throwing those shots to Hooker with his hands, and he just looked completely bereft of all energy. So he needs to work in his gas tank too in order to start finishing guys at 45. Because from what we've seen of Shane Burgos, he can push the pace for the full 15 minutes. And Barbosa has to be able to match that. He can't just rely on kicks, as great of an X factor as they are. He can't just sit back and rely on them either, because Burgos is going to know that, and Burgos is going to be preparing for that. So Barbosa needs to have the stamina to go all 15 for takedown defenses potentially, and to push forward on his own offense, as Jack has just said. So definitely watch out for this fight. Don't let it slip under your radar. It is going to be amazing.
Yeah, one thing real quick, I will say though, that is very true about his gas tank, but in his last couple of fights at 145, he definitely won this last fight, but especially in the first one, the reason I think people thought the other guy won the decision was because he wasn't letting his hands go enough. He wasn't kicking enough. And I think that was because he was a little bit worried about the gas tank. And with a guy like I was listening to, I think Max Holloway was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and they were talking about this as well. There's different guys different styles depending on how their gas tank is going to go, not necessarily if they're doing all the cardio. Edson Barbosa needs to throw the heat, and that's how he wins a lot of his fights, is by just pure like throwing it out there. That takes a big toll on his gas tank, but that's how he wins a lot of his fights. So I think he does need to let his hands go, and he needs to be aware of how tired he is and not let it all out. But I think he definitely needs to throw more than what he's thrown in his last couple fights at featherweight, and really needs to go and hurt Shane Burgos, because if Shane Burgos is fresh going into the second, third round, not taking too much damage, because Edson Barbosa has been a little bit slower to get started, that could be dangerous, and the tide could turn really quickly for him though.
Yeah, I agree. That's a really good point. I think he has been more conscious of his stamina in the last couple of fights, and he's tried to be more precise with letting go the heat.
Yeah,
and of course, that's a complete contradiction. You can't just unload the heat expecting it to be a sniper shot every time. He does have to let it go, especially if it does get to a decision. So absolutely, I fully agree with you.
Yeah. All right. Well, next thing, rolling on here, we're doing really good. Kevin Lee is making statements again, and he said that he wants to fight Tony Ferguson, beat Tony Ferguson, then fight Conor McGregor by the end of the year. Well, what do we think about this somewhat unrealistic or maybe realistic goal of Kevin Lee?
I like it. I like Kevin Lee, man. I think the matchup with Ferguson would be a good one. Obviously, they fought before, and Ferguson was able to submit him. But at this point in time, it seems like Kevin Lee is on a bit of a come up, and Ferguson is on a bit of a, I wouldn't say decline, but he's on a skid for sure. So Kevin Lee's looking to strike while the iron's hot, and that, even though Ferguson has lost the last couple of fights, he's still a big name in 155. He's still ranked 7th. So that'd be a big opportunity for Ferguson. I mean, for Lee. And if he's able to get that win, cracks the top 10. He's number 11 right now, so he definitely cracks the top 10. And man, maybe even moves up pretty close to the top 5. As far as a McGregor matchup, that'd be like maybe down the road if both of those guys continue to win. I know that he's had McGregor's name in his mouth forever. I mean, there's been some back and forth between them, but it's all come from, well, it's not even back and forth. It's just trash talking from Kevin Lee about Conor McGregor here and there. So I think the only way that happens, like I said, is if they both continue to win. I think Connor's future is on the line in the Poirier trilogy. I think if he somehow beats Dustin, he'll continue to fight. And I think if Connor loses that fight to Poirier, then he's probably going to retire. I don't see him sticking around after that. So, yeah, the only way I see that being a realistic matchup is if it's somehow for the number one contender spot or for a belt at 155 eventually down the line. But both of those guys need to start winning and continue winning for that to happen. It's not just he's not gonna beat Tony Ferguson and then get Conor McGregor. That's just not gonna happen. But I like the call outs.
Man, I've literally got about 1,000 memes I could start quoting at this moment, but I'm not going to. We're in serious mode right now. Um, yeah, I actually do agree with Mace, surprisingly, in this point. I like the ambition in the call out to Kevin Lee. It shows he's still serious about the game and everything else. We've broken down Tony Ferguson's losses quite a lot over the last month or two in the podcast. And, Tony Ferguson has not lost to bums. He's lost to two of the biggest sharks at lightweight right now. And there's absolutely no shame in that, and there never will be any shame in that. I don't think Ferguson makes any sense for Kevin Lee. Kevin Lee kind of had his shot already at a somewhat prime Tony, and Tony put him in a nasty triangle and dominated him on the ground pretty much. So just in my opinion, I don't see that really happening. I think if Tony loses his next fight or two, that becomes more tangible and more realistic just because they would match up closer in the rankings. But, Tony's actually number 5 at lightweight. He's not number 7. RDA is. Yeah, he's propping up the top 5. I didn't even realize that.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't think it'll happen. Even if it did, I still think Ferguson's way too good on the ground. He's a black belt with Eddie Bravo, who, whilst one of the most unique, is one of the greatest Brazilian jiu-jitsu coaches in the world today. Even on the feet, I still think Ferguson can throw anything out of anywhere. As for the Conor fight, it's just not going to happen, Kevin. I'm sorry. I know you want the payday and you want the money fight, but I just don't see it happening. Conor is going to go for the trilogy against Dustin, and depending on how that goes, he could be either re-propelled into the title picture, or I think, like Mace, he will angle towards retirement. Even in the last couple of days with Proper 12, he sold, I think, a majority stake in the company. So he's just got a massive personal cash injection. Even when he never needed the money before, he absolutely needs nothing now. And, that feeds into various different questions about motivation and so on, but that's not what we're talking about. There's just too much of a discrepancy between Conor McGregor and Kevin Lee. Lee's a big name at lightweight, but he's become more of a big name at lightweight because he's more of a meme than because of his fighting. I mean, yes, fantastic knockout over Gregor Gillespie a couple of years ago, but what's he done since then? As far as I'm concerned, activity's a massive factor in any division, especially a division like lightweight, and he's just not been doing enough. He lost a decision to Ali Aquinta, I think was his last fight. I could be wrong.
No. His last fight was getting choked out by Oliveira.
Oh, that's right.
That was bad. That was really bad. I forgot
about that. Yeah, he lost to Oliveira. So as far as I'm concerned, Kevin Lee, and I'm honestly not trying to be funny, this is my honest assessment of Kevin Lee. If Kevin Lee stops trying to see holes in other people's games and starts fixing the holes in his own, he will start pushing himself further up there. But he's got to get his head in the game and get focused, because Ferguson may happen. I personally don't think it will at this point, but Conor's just never going to happen. I don't see it at all. So Kevin Lee, get focused, get back in the game, and get your head screwed on, because skill-wise, Kevin Lee is capable of tangling with these guys. His wrestling is really good, and I certainly think he would be capable of beating someone like RDA. But if he's serious about tackling the top 5 of lightweight, he really, really needs to get back into it, because it's becoming almost embarrassing at this point unless he's backing it up with something. So that's my take on Kevin Lee. I respect the ambition, but it's going a bit too far.
That was a sneaky one, Keelan. I caught that, the holes in the game. You were like, all right, all seriousness, and then, all right, no. You know what? You know what? one thing Kevin Lee has been good at and consistent at his entire career is calling out fighters. Now, this would be a good fight, honestly. Man, I did not know Tony Ferguson was still ranked that high. I thought he was like 7.
Yeah, he's
Oh,
still
man.
5.
I think Hooker's 7 actually.
You're 7 now?
No,
Okay.
RDA
Chandler?
7, Hooker's 8.
Where's
Hooker's
Chandler?
8.
Where's Chandler?
Chandler's
4.
like 3 or 4, yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. Man. Anyway, so what I was going to say is I completely agree with Mason. They should actually, I think that's a good fight, Kevin Lee versus Tony Ferguson. But if Tony Ferguson is 5, I don't think you can do that fight right now. I think Kevin Lee one more fight, and then if Tony Ferguson is inactive, they bump his ranking down. Then you have a more realistic thing. I think that might be the way to go. I want to see that fight as soon as possible, but Kevin Lee has not been consistent as of recently. I mean, he lost to Iaquinta. By the way, shout out Matt Serra, one of my favorite coaches to watch. Aljamain, so we will talk about that fight in just a second. That was amazing, that last minute speech. Anyways, aside from that, he lost to Iaquinta. Then goes on and knocks out Gregor Gillespie in one of the craziest knockouts I've ever seen. The head kick was beautiful, and then slam against the cage. I mean, wow. But then riding that momentum, he goes off and faces Charles Oliveira, and that entire fight was terrible for him. I mean, it was hard to watch, honestly, and he just got completely dominated and submitted. That was the one where also it was a really bad look at the end because he tapped and then like kind of protested that he didn't tap.
Like he didn't tap.
Really did tap. It was kind of like,
That's right.
ooh, kind of take the balls, yeah. But there's no shame in losing Charles Oliveira. It was just kind of the way. But he still has a bright future ahead of him, and he's training at a good camp now. I do think that he can turn his career in the right direction. I really like this call out of Tony Ferguson. I think it's a good fight. If Tony Ferguson was ranked 7, I say do it. I say do the fight. But for right now, Kevin Lee maybe fight. There's a lot of dangerous opponents. I know Islam Makhachev is fighting pretty soon. Maybe that's a more realistic matchup. That's a dangerous fight for him, though. I don't know. Lightweight is so tough. Yeah, lightweight is so tough. I don't know. Maybe one more fight and then Tony Ferguson. That's a good call out. I don't even need to mention the Conor McGregor stuff because you guys already talked about that. That's not realistic. But yeah, I do like the Tony Ferguson fight. And Kevin Lee, if he's ready to go, I think he can beat a lot of the top lightweights on his day.
However, if Conor loses the trilogy and for some reason continues to fight, then it becomes a lot more realistic.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
If Kevin Lee does something in that time frame, then it becomes a lot more realistic.
I'm really surprised actually that Ferguson's number 5. I thought he was 7. That's really, like they've Gaethje at number 2 behind Poirier.
Well, I mean, Poirier at number 1 makes sense.
Yeah, Poirier absolutely, but Oliveira should be 2 there at least. That's really, really surprising. 2 fights I would like to see for Kevin Lee if he does get back into the swing of things. Actually, number 9 Beneil Dariush. I think that makes sense, and then Dan Hooker. I think Hooker stylistically would be an amazing fight. So for Kevin Lee, as much as I think it's slightly overreaching, there are good options out there. And if he fights either one of those 2, and like you guys said, if Ferguson's either inactive or he takes another L in his next fight, that fight does become much more tangible in the rankings, and it will sell because people love watching Ferguson fight, and Kevin Lee is pretty well known. So absolutely, it's certainly capable of happening. I just think as we speak right now, it's not likely, but stylistically, if they want to do the rematch, I say let them have it.
Yeah, I like that.
They've got that good build-up from the first time around, too, or the back and forth on the interviews on the UFC Tonight or whatever it was. They've got a good build-up going from that first one, so maybe that does make sense.
Yeah, I like that that Beneil Dariush fight. I think that would be a really good fight because Beneil Dariush has been on a real run lately. He's looked really good. So if Kevin Lee is able to beat him, I think that does wonders for his not only ranking, but I think his confidence. And then I think you could start talking Tony Ferguson. I think Dan Hooker is still a little bit too high in the rankings, but I think that's a pretty good fight right there. I like that name.
And Dariush is a demon on the ground too, so it would be a great wrestling matchup as well, which plays to Kevin Lee's strength as well as Dariush's.
Yep.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, oh man, UFC 259 Saturday. I can't believe it. I'm so excited. 3 title fights. We will be predicting those 3 title fights right now. Let's go ahead and get started, which I think we all agree we think is going to be the closest title fight on this card. Also, massive implications for this fight. It's everything you could ask for. Petr Yan versus Aljamain Sterling. Mace, who do you think will win this fight?
Yeah, just like you just said, this will be the closest fight out of all 3 title fights, I think. Um, I got Sterling in this one by submission if he can get Jan to the ground. That's a big question, but if he can get him down there, I think he can submit him. Uh, that would be the first time that Jan's finished in his career, but I think that I feel like that's what's going to happen. But yeah, like you said, this is going to be the closest title fight of the night. I just think Sterling's going to pull it out.
Yeah, this is, I don't think we need to talk anymore about how much of an incredible title fight it is. Vegas's odds telling us this is almost a dead heat in who they think's going to win. And that's just wholly indicative of how close this fight's going to be. The more I've been thinking about this, the more I'm ever so slightly creaking towards Aljamain. And the reason is actually pretty opposite to Mace. I think he's got the most varied offense that Petr Yan's ever faced. And I think that might mess with Yan's head as soon as they get in the octagon. On the occasions we've been talking about this fight, I've mentioned the Jose Aldo fight a lot. And one thing that you have to take from the Aldo fight is that Petr Yan takes a round or two to process his opponents and how to counter whatever it is they bring to the fight. The thing is, Aljamain Sterling's known for starting really quickly, especially in the feet. Like, we look at the Corey Sandhagen fight, we kind of thought Sterling might come out slow and methodical, knowing what Sandhagen brings, and he submitted him within a round. So Aljamain has so many different places he can bring this fight. Like Mace said, he can bring this to the ground and submit him. I think he might keep this on the feet and try and make a statement against Petr Yan. That's an absolutely no way disrespect to Petr Yan. No one should be sleeping on him one bit. But Aljamain Sterling just brings such interesting and varied offense to his fights. Even his movements different. The way he throws his jabs are different. The way he hooks and gets out is different. Petr Yan cannot fight an orthodox fight against Aljamain Sterling. He has to have at least tried to create a template of how to defend against such an unorthodox offense. So I think Aljamain Sterling might bring too many varied weapons to the fight, and I think one might catch Petr Yan out quite early. So I have Aljamain Sterling by a stoppage around the second or the third.
Oh man, I was hoping you'd pick Petr Yan there. I wanted you to be different so I could hold you to it on the next podcast. Dang it.
Sorry, I picked Yan.
Man. Well, usually I like to be different here, but I have been following Aljamain Sterling for so long, and I feel for the guy because he's deserved a title shot for so long. He's been around there for so long. I like to be different, but I have to go with Aljamain Sterling. I've been behind him for so long, and he has looked incredible. His last fight was against Corey Sandhagen, which is actually kind of insane seeing what Corey Sandhagen has done in the time that they've last fought, which is mind-blowing, but still proves how impressive that win was over Corey Sandhagen. In like 15 seconds, he choked him out. He's one of the best, I think the best, at least in that division on the ground. Has one of the best head coaches behind him. Very exciting fighting style. You can't count out Petr Yan, though. He has great stuff. And the big question is, can he get it to the ground? I think he can. And people that are saying it's just one-dimensional, if it's on the feet, Yan wins. If it's on the ground, Sterling wins. That's incorrect because both guys are so well-rounded and so talented in each of their aspects that it's going to depend on where and what situation they're in. That being said, I think Petr Yan will get a little bit worn out having to deal with, like Heelan said, the varied offense of Aljamain Sterling. On the feet, I do think he's in danger, though. I don't think he will try and stand up and prove a point against Petr Yan because that is a mistake if anyone tries to do that because you could get caught with anything. I mean, look at what he did to Jose Aldo. He weathered the storm for a little bit, then came back and just completely dismantled him. So I think that's a mistake. I don't think he'll be looking to do that. I think he'll go to his strengths, trying to get it to the ground. But I don't think he'll be able to do it immediately. I think about a fourth round submission, wear and tear on Piotr Jan a little bit, and then submit him in the fourth round. So Aljamain Sterling and new for me, but ooh, that's gonna be a good one. That's gonna be a good one.
I'm gonna say third round submission.
Third round.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in no way mad at the submission prediction at all. In fact, it makes a hell of a lot of sense. I think what we're going to see from Aljamain Sterling on Saturday night is a fantastic weaving of his offense on the feet and on the ground. I think one is going to transition into the other effortlessly. Perhaps I'm wrong with the knockout prediction. Perhaps he might spend the first 2 or 3 rounds completely wearing Jan out and then taking it to the ground and showing what Matt Serra's taught him. Just to be a little different, I will say knockouts, just because I also think he is very capable of it. But, certainly don't sleep on the submission prediction either. That's a very, very valid one. I actually think Sterling gets slept on a little on the ground, despite knowing how good he is. I think his wrestling is very underappreciated, so do watch out for that, guys, too.
Right. And even despite the number of submission victories he's got compared to knockout victories, he does get slept on there quite a bit.
Quite amazingly.
We all have Aljamain, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and roll into our co-main event of the evening. The women's greatest of all time, unquestionably, Amanda Nunes is defending her featherweight title against the up-and-coming Megan Anderson. Mace, who do you think will win it?
Nunes. I know Megan Anderson is tough, and I don't know if y'all saw the face-offs earlier, but she towers over Amanda Nunes.
It's crazy, yeah.
I think 5 inches, 6 inches maybe. She towers over her. So I don't necessarily know if that's an advantage, but it could be. It could turn out to play a factor in the fight. The reach advantage is going to be there for Anderson as well. Even with that being said, I just don't see how she gets this done against Amanda Nunes. Is it possible? Yeah, sure, it's possible. According to you guys, it would be the biggest upset of all time if it did happen.
Side conversation we had. Well, that'll be a topic if she wins.
Yeah, but and she's never been knocked out before, Megan Anderson, which is crazy. But I mean, she's pretty damn good. But when you're talking about her facing the greatest women's fighter of all time, it's hard to pick her. Obviously, anything can happen in this fight. Would I be mad if Anderson won the fight? No, I would not, because I love watching Megan Anderson fight. I respect her as a fighter, as a person. I just don't see it happening. But if it did, I'd be happy for her.
Yeah, I love Megan Anderson. I think she's an amazing fighter. She's an amazing personality. And like you guys said, I was actually watching the pre-fight press conference before we came on here. And, Megan Anderson's like the featherweight Stefan Struve. She just towers over Amanda Nunes. Like, I didn't even realize how big the height difference was until those two women were actually standing next to each other. The difference is ridiculous. And even when you see any of Megan Anderson's previous fights, the physical reach advantage she has over some of her opponents is unlike anything we've ever seen in women's fighting almost. So, Megan Anderson shouldn't be going into this with no confidence at all. Certainly not what I'm saying at all. But you're going up against the greatest women's fighter of all time in Amanda Nunes. And like I said last week, she's gone up against every kind of opponent. She's gone up against fighters who outreach her, like Chris Cyborg. She's gone up against fighters who outpower her, who out-wrestle her, and she still finds a way to beat them all. So like Mace said, I just don't tangibly see how Megan Anderson can get this done. I keep trying to figure out the most unlikely pathways for Megan to do this, and none of them play out. The only way I can somehow see this happening is because of the massive physical difference. Megan somehow gets Amanda against the cage, maybe lands a kick and a flying knee or something and hurts her that way. But I just think Amanda's too ring smart to get caught by that. I think she knows that's what's coming and she will not be there to get hit. So I have Amanda Nunes winning again, but I would not by any means at all be mad if Megan did win. I actually think, as I think I said last week or the week before, I think it would be women's featherweights Buster Douglas, Mike Tyson if Megan won. I think we are talking that level. I mean, I don't generally trust Vegas odds, but look at the odds they have. Amanda Nunes is negative 1,000. That's incredible. We haven't seen numbers like that really since Ronda Rousey days. So that's how highly Amanda Nunes is rated. Irrespective of betting, though, I just think Nunes is too well rounded. I think Amanda Nunes knockout by the third round.
Okay, guys, get ready for this. Just wait. Amanda Nunes, and this is based off of Gila not choosing Petr Yan. All right, so no disrespect to Amanda Nunes whenever you win, but I'm picking Megan Anderson to become the new featherweight champion as my official prediction for this podcast. Because if I'm right, I am going to bring it for the next podcast. I'm definitely going to faceplant, but it doesn't matter because that is what I'm going to decide on doing. All right, this is what's going to happen. I have to throw some variation in there. All right, she's 6 feet tall. She's like the women's Stefan Struve, right? I mean, maybe she could throw a knee in there. Maybe she could land something. It's MMA. Anything can happen, right? I mean, I'm just saying. I have written down here Nunes KO round 2. It doesn't matter. Ignore that. I'm picking Megan Anderson. All right. I mean, that's what's happening right now. That's what's going to happen. All right. That's my official prediction. When it happens, I'm bringing it for the next podcast. I'm printing out a picture of Megan Anderson, and we're going from there. All right. That's it. That's my prediction. We're moving on.
First of all, we're calling Megan Anderson the Stefan Struve of the women's featherweight division. Like Stefan Struve is some undefeated juggernaut. Like that. The only reason we're comparing them to is because of the height, not because they're extremely skilled, undefeated world beaters. So calm down with that.
I do mean by the height, though. I do mean by the height. I mean, because of the height difference, Amanda Nunes will be all over the place. That's what I mean by the height. Not that Stefan Struve was.
Oh God!
I don't know if Amanda can she knock out Megan Anderson. Yes, I don't know if she will. I think that the reach advantage. I think Megan will be able to keep the distance, but she will get beat up eventually. I could see a late 4th or 5th round TKO, maybe just her overwhelming Megan at some point. Knocking her out cold or putting her on her ass and ending the fight there, I don't see that happening. I see a 4th or 5th round beat down that happens quickly or unanimous for Nunes. I hope you're right, Jack. I really hope you are right, but man,
just wait.
I'm comparing Megan Anderson to Stefan Struve. Oh, and another thing too, real quick. I saw that Amanda Nunes had said that she would be okay with Dana taking the featherweight division away if she won. Like, how can you do that? If Megan Anderson somehow beats Amanda Nunes, you can't take the featherweight division away after an upset like that. After Megan Anderson worked to get to that spot and then win the belt and then take the division away, then Nunes is still the champ at 135. So, I mean, that's another bridge. We'll cross that if we get there, which we won't. But
come on,
you know, that's just crazy to say something like that.
My issue with it is this: if Amanda Nunes manages to land that power on the chin of Megan Struve Velasquez, as Jack obviously thinks she is, how is Megan Anderson going to cope with that? Because Amanda hits harder than any other featherweight or women's bantamweight fighter that there is. So I'm just trying to get over that Struve comparison.
I don't think she's going to land a Mark Hunt punch on Stefan Struve. I think it'll go a different way. All right.
I think she will.
This is where the height advantage could come in because obviously if the punches aren't straightforward to an opponent that's your same height or shorter, then the power and the extension is going to cause a little lack of power. Now, whether it's going to be a big lack of power, I doubt it. But I don't think I just don't see her landing a flush punch on the jaw of Megan Anderson and taking her out. Like I said, I think Megan will do a good job of keeping distance, of doing her best to keep distance. And it's going to be extremely hard. I mean, you think of like Chandler and Hooker. Chandler dipped in with a right hook to the body and then came up with a left hook to the head. So maybe something like that happens if Nunes can get in there on Anderson, then I could see that happening. But I think Megan's going to do a good job of keeping distance. I just think Nunes is going to be really technical with her striking and eventually pick her apart. But as far as a big right hand of the jaw, putting her on her ass like she did Cyborg, I don't think that's going to happen.
My only issue with Megan Anderson's striking is that she has shown before she's prone to getting hit quite easily. All right, those are opponents that are slightly taller than Amanda Nunes. That's absolutely true. But the evidence is still there to compare. And what I think might happen is as well, I think Amanda Nunes is going to come out as she does and pressure Megan Anderson. And it's what Megan Anderson does in the back foot that's really going to determine how well she does here. If she can get the jab off and use her reach to punch down, then by all means, she's still very much in the fight. My concern for Megan Anderson is if she ends up against the cage, can she get out again? Because Amanda Nunes generally doesn't let you go from the side of the cage when she has you. That's where I think she's going to land the overhand. I think Megan Anderson's going to throw a jab to try and get off the cage. Nunes is going to duck under, throw that overhand, and she's going to floor her. That's where I see the fight ending. Now, I fully understand the point about Chandler and Hooker, and it's a very good comparison. But Amanda Nunes hits ridiculously hard, and she's an incredibly intelligent boxer too, so she will be able to plan this out and get it done.
Is Amanda Nunes the Michael Chandler of the women's featherweight division? Is that what we're saying?
So it's Michael Chandler versus Stephon Struve, pretty much. That's what we're going with. That's what we're going with. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Amanda Chandler, is that what we're saying now?
Yeah.
Oh man. In all seriousness, though, I do think maybe Megan Anderson will be able to use that reach advantage. And Amanda Nunes' last fight did go to a decision. I think last two fights maybe went to a decision. And if she's able to use that reach effectively, and Amanda Nunes is having to rush in a lot because it is a big difference, maybe she could win a decision, possibly. I'm still going with my pick. My official prediction will be Megan Anderson knockout round 2. And that's what we're going with right there. That's what I'm thinking. Let's do it.
This cannot go to a decision in favor Megan Anderson. Like, in order to dethrone Amanda Nunes, it's going to have to be a beatdown. 100%.
I do agree with that. I do agree with that. Yeah.
It'll have to be decisive, very decisive.
I agree with
if
that.
it goes to a decision, because anything close, I mean, like we've said it before, if you're going to beat the champ, you have to beat the champ. There has to be no question about it. So it's knockout or submission for Megan Anderson, or it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, Dominic Reyes proved that against John Jones. When you're going up against an incumbent champion, you have to beat them decisively. One angle I could potentially see Megan Anderson winning this, and it's an angle Jack just alluded to, because of the obvious reach difference and height difference that we have in this fight, Nunes at some point will have to rush in if she wants to finish it. Now, I can't remember who the opponent was off the top of my head, but there was a fight where Megan Anderson threw a flying knee against the side of the cage because of her height difference. We could see something like that. I don't think it would knock Amanda Nunes out, but it could certainly hurt her. And we could see where the fight goes from there. So Megan Anderson does have weapons available. If she can keep Nunes off for the first couple of rounds, I think that's where the fight's going to be won or lost for Megan Anderson. The longer the fight goes on, the longer the chance she has, perhaps, of starting to implement her own game. My official prediction is still Nunes to win by knockout, just because history tells us that, and it's very hard to go against that. But you know, I really don't think Megan Anderson winning is as much of an infinite impossibility as people are making it out to be. You know, we said last week, we were alluding to the Ronda Rousey Holly Holm fight. You know, people thought that would never happen, and it did. Granted, it never should have been as much of an upset as it was, because we knew the keys were there to see. But history's proven us to be wrong sometimes, so perhaps at some point we have to be wrong.
I didn't convince you to switch over to Anderson. Oh, man. All right. No. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on to the main event of the evening. Everything is on the line. Israel Adesanya moving up to 205 pounds light heavyweight, and he will be fighting the champion Jan Blachowicz, who has looked incredible. Who do we think will become the new or stay the light heavyweight champion at UFC 259?
I have a feeling that Adesanya is going to make this look easy. I just have a feeling that that's going to happen. I think he'll go in there light on his feet, obviously trying to avoid the power that Blachowicz presents, and I think he's just going to pick him apart. Adesanya's biggest worry is getting knocked out. It has to be. Like I said, light on his feet, lots of movement, picking his shots here and there. I think he picks him apart. Third or fourth round, I can see him overwhelming Jan after wearing him down for a little bit and then finishing him by TKO. I'd say third or fourth round. But I think this is going to be easy work for Adesanya. And then we'll see where he goes from there.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of Mace's prediction. I don't know if it's going to be easy, and the only reason I question whether it'll be easy or not is strictly because it's a new division we're seeing Adesanya in. So he's kind of unknown goods at 205, so he could be even better than 185. He could look slightly slow. We simply don't know. We have no litmus test really to go on. I do think Adesanya will win, and it's why I feel really sorry for Jan Blachowicz. We've talked about it quite a few times. I do think I see Adesanya going in there, breaking Blachowicz down early. I see him throwing those leg kicks and chopping at the base, sort of similar to what Poirier did to Conor, because Blachowicz' big weapon is that southpaw left hook. And I think Adesanya is going to target that right leg so he can't plant and throw anything through it. And if Blachowicz doesn't have the left hand, then I struggle to see what he does have to finish the fight. I think Adesanya is going to go in very technical, as I said, breaking down early on, and perhaps going into round 2 or maybe round 3 looking for the finish. I think Blachowicz is going to start getting desperate to land perhaps a takedown or get him against the cage. And I think that's when you'll see Adesanya strike. I think he'll start slicing him apart, and I think he will get perhaps a late third round finish. But unfortunately for Jan, much as I have tremendous respect for him, everybody knows how much I do. UFC 259 for me is #and new.
It almost feels like destiny, doesn't it? Like whenever Conor went up to fight Alvarez, he was on such a roll. I almost felt like that was going to happen. I felt like it had to happen. I almost feel that I feel the same way about this one. Obviously, Cormier, whenever he fought Stipe the first time, and I feel the same way about this one. He's been so dominant at 185 pounds. He's been so good on the feet and everything. He just looks incredible. Jan Blachowicz has looked incredible as well, obviously beating Dominic Reyes. I didn't think he was going to do that. I thought Dominic Reyes was going to beat Jan Blachowicz, but he proved me wrong. He proved everyone wrong, and he did amazing. It's just his striking. Israel Adesanya is so good at just picking his shots. And I think, Keelan, you've been saying this whole time we've been talking about 259, that his coach and now Israel Adesanya said that he's really probably going to be fighting at around 193-ish pounds, around walking weight for him. I think that's actually a great decision. That could go against his way on the fence and in the grappling, and I think that's what Jan Blachowicz should aim to do, because he would be the bigger guy by quite some difference. But on the flip side of that, I think it's amazing for Israel Adesanya. He's going to be light. He's going to just have a little bit more pop on his punches because he's going to be that much heavier and not have to cut down a little bit. I think he's going to look phenomenal, and I think it's meant to happen the way his career has been trending. I think he's going to become the light heavyweight champion of the world, and really he might aim for the John Jones fight. Who knows what happens from there? It just becomes that much more chaotic. Honestly, it becomes even more chaotic if Jan Blachowicz wins at this point, because I think a lot of people are expecting Israel Adesanya. Yeah. How are you thinking about that? But either way, chaos will ensue after the fight, and Israel Adesanya, for me, like Keelan said, #and new.
Yeah, that's a great point that you made, though, because you think about it, if Adesanya is going to be fighting around 193, by the time fight night comes around, Blachowicz is going to be damn near 220 pounds, 225 pounds.
Yeah.
So you're talking a 25 to 30 pound difference. And yeah, that could be trouble for Adesanya against the cage and the grappling exchanges. However, I think that's where the footwork is going to come in, the lightness on the feet and just not getting caught in those situations, I think is what Adesanya's got got to keep from happening. And I think he takes the fight.
Yeah, Israel Adesanya has always shown his weapons that he relies on for his success. He prefers his weapons being light but sharp as opposed to being heavy and dense but dull. And I think this is what he's counting on coming into this fight. Fantastic point, Mace. Blachowicz is going to come in around 220 in fight night once he's rehydrated, because Blachowicz is a huge guy.
Yeah.
He's a massive 205 fighter. So yeah, there's going to be probably about a 25-30 pound weight discrepancy on fight night. And if Blachowicz somehow gets us against the cage or even to the ground, Adesanya will feel that weight on him and it will start to drain his energy. But like Mace also said, where Adesanya's counting on winning this fight is the footwork and the speed and dictating the pace. And as long as that works, then it becomes his fight to lose, because Blachowicz is going to start getting tired, not only beat up, but carrying around all that weight. And it's going to start to slow him down more and more and more. And he will become an easier target for Izzy to pick off. So I think Izzy's gone into this fight with incredibly cerebral thinking, and I think he has thought very smart about it. I don't think he's going to risk going in straight away to try and knock him out, because Jan's going to be too fresh. And Izzy knows if he gets caught, he will go to sleep, because 205 power, we've seen what Blachowicz carries. So I think Adesanya's going to be content with the first round, feeling him out, trying to get a few leg kicks in here and there, slowing him down a little and breaking him down more and more as the rounds go on, with a mid to late stoppage. So I'm going to stick with late third round stoppage or very early fourth, but I do see Adesanya winning the title.
Yeah, I completely agree with it. That's actually where I'm at with it as well. I have a strong feeling third round for Izzy. That's just because I think Jan Blachowicz is too fresh there. I think the first two rounds, Israel Adesanya keeps his distance, does some good body shots, leg kicks, kind of just chops away, slows him down, takes away from the cardio, and then finishes him in third. That's what I'm thinking. And the last thing I kind of am thinking on this as well is Israel Adesanya. Jan Blachowicz has one goal in mind, and that is to land a power punch and knock him out cold. Israel Adesanya has many methods to victory. He's not looking for just one thing. He's looking for multiple things all at one time. He's seriously one of the best strikers in the UFC at the moment, and really of all time that we've seen. He looks so good, so sharp, so precise, and he also packs a punch. And I think he will pack a larger shot now that he's putting on, even though it's only like 10 pounds. I think he will be hitting a little bit harder as well, but with the same amount of movement. I think, now I could be wrong about this one, but I know you like to make a lot of boxing comparisons. Fury Wilder too. Tyson Fury weighed in a lot lighter than Wilder in that fight, and his footwork was incredible, and he was able to land faster shots, and he looked like the fresher guy throughout there. And I think that's kind of how this fight's going to go with Israel Adesanya.
No, it's actually a really good comparison you make to the Fury Wilder fight, but Fury was actually heavier.
Oh, he's heavier? Okay.
Yeah, Fury came in
okay.
Yeah, for the second fight, Fury was about 270, but Tyson Fury, for those who don't follow boxing or who perhaps are new to Tyson Fury carries weight really well. I think you're thinking of the first fight when he was at his career lowest, and he moved unbelievably, but the punches hurt him. But with Tyson Fury, when he carries weight, that fight was the first fight boxing fans have ever seen Fury with knockout power. That was him showing that he can actually go out and knock out heavyweights now, because historically Tyson Fury would be out pointing opponents and, tippy-tappy and get out of the way. The second Wilder fight showed that he can knock people out now, but it's actually a very good comparison, because even in this game, 5 pounds, 10 pounds can make all the difference. And, an extra 10 pounds on a head kick, an extra 10 pounds on a left hook, it does all add up and it does all make the difference. And what a lot of people forget about Jan as well is that Jan Blachowicz is 37. So he's very, very battle tested, and his chin, of course, it was never going to be, but it's not what it is 5 or 6 years ago. So we could see Izzy with much more power here too. There's hundreds of different dynamics at play that we could sit here for hours and break down. But Izzy is definitely coming into this fight with a lot of weapons, no question. And I'm so intrigued to see how he uses them.
Yeah, I don't think that the move up in weight for Izzy is going to be any kind of issue with cardio or anything like that. I think he's too athletic for that to be an issue. And when you think about it, even when he's fighting at 185, he's probably weighing 195 before he on fight night. So technically he's fighting at the weight he's fighting at 185. So there's really nothing changing in my opinion. I think that he's just a really athletic guy, and I don't think that there will be anything as far as moving up in weight that's going to hamper him. He'll definitely have more power, I would assume, and that's it. I think that's the only thing that changes for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely agree.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, UFC 259 right around the corner. This was an awesome podcast. Thank you, everyone, so much for listening. Make sure to go ahead and like and subscribe on YouTube. You know the drill. We are everywhere available. iTunes, Spotify, anywhere you can listen to a podcast. We are there. Please make sure to go ahead and follow us on Instagram at MMA.island and check out our website, MMA.island.net. Great work on there. As always, guys, phenomenal podcast. And everyone, thank you so much for listening.
Thanks, guys.
Amazing, guys. Can't wait to catch up with everyone after the biggest card so far of the year. Let's get it.